he's always been challenged at Aston Villa, and he seems to always come out the other side of it as, you can try and replace me, but there is no replace me because I'm that good of a player.
The coveted search for a striker continues because we know that is the most important position on the pitch. That's why you pay the big bucks. These are the reported strikers that are still hot in demand. Of course, Benjamin Šeško, you just saw his goal there for RB Leipzig. Alexander Isak, of course, is training away from Newcastle right now. And Ollie Watkins, who's always quiet, but an assassin when necessary. I love it because we can talk about the names, of course, your Victor Osimhen's, your Victor Gyökeres, your João Pedro's, who have now completed their moves. But the hunt for a striker still continues across Europe. And these three names are some of the biggest targets. Now, I want you to go through each one and I want you to enjoy it because this could rumble on for a long while. We know how the transfer market is and a lot of the windows are still going. Teams still want to build. But take me through Benjamin Šeško, first of all, because what we've seen from him so far looks elite in this RB Leipzig shirt. Yeah,
I think he's one of those players that looks like an obvious scout's dream. When you go to watch a player, you go, oh man, the vertical leap, the size, the power, the striking ability. I still think he has a little bit of a ways to go in terms of actually putting it together, in terms of being a finished product, being that top-level striker. The production hasn't quite been there, but it's just one of those where you watch him play, you go, oh, I see this. I've seen this before. This can work. He's going to be a good player, you would think, at some point. But I just think in the overall, I was a bit disappointed in the performance that Leipzig as a team put out. And I think the reason why I felt that way is because you go into the season, they have Šeško, they have Lois Openda, they have Xavi Simons. This should be a team in the attack that is unstoppable, and I never really felt that of Leipzig last season. Disappointing in the Champions League, disappointing in the Bundesliga to not even make Europe. So I think Šeško still has a little bit of a ways to go, but you can understand why clubs are looking at him going 75, 80 million, why Leipzig won 75, 80 million, because this is a player that obviously projects to being a future star, but right now it's only projects. It's not quite that finished article.
So when you see the links to Manchester United, you see the links to Newcastle, depending, of course, how Alexander Isak, who's another person we're going to talk about on this, plays out. How do you see him fitting at Man United? Do you see that being him being the target man and the #1 striker as soon as he walks in through the door, if he does walk through the door?
I think so, because, well, the one thing that would, I think, be a little bit confusing for me when it comes to Man United is you have Bruno Fernandes who's already there, you sign Cunha, you sign Brian Mbeumo. So if you're only playing with 3 attackers, 3 strikers, one of those players is going to have to sit on the bench. And so I'm not sure, with Zirkzee and with Højlund already there, I understand that they have not worked out to date, but for Manchester United, for me, it doesn't make sense, with all the holes that they have through their squad, that they go out and spend $225 million, all of their resources on their attack. I understand they only scored 44 goals last season, which is an appalling record. And there are a lot of reasons why that happened. But I think Šeško, actually, to me right now, makes a bit more sense at Newcastle. Because even if they keep Alexander Isak, we can talk about that story and all the developments that happened there. But even if they keep him, you know that at maximum, there's 1 more year left probably for Isak at Newcastle. And so they need to find his replacement. I think if we're talking about him moving in this window, it would make more sense to Newcastle, in my judgment.
Well, Newcastle naturally have to fill that void anyway because Callum Wilson has also left. So they might be looking for more than 1 striker naturally within this window.
Šeško's a little overqualified to be a backup.
I like that.
But I think they've got to figure out maybe, if Isak stays, how to play the 2 of them together.
Let's talk about the silent assassin, someone who's an international striker, but you don't really hear a peep from him, Ollie Watkins. I know saw the transfer deadline bid last January in terms of from Arsenal, and he looked like he had agreed terms and wanted to explore what looked like Champions League football more consistently. But how do you see his future in this window?
Well, first off, let's talk about the second half of last season, when they bring in Marcus Rashford, when they bring in Marco Asensio. He was a player, and even John Duran, who had his period before going to Saudi Arabia, he's always been challenged at Aston Villa, and he seems to always come out the other side of it as, you can try and replace me, but there is no replace me because I'm that good of a player. And coming through the leagues, you look at his previous destinations, playing at Brentford, playing in non-league. He's got an incredible background to have gotten here. The one thing, though, that is just a reality now of the way that most clubs do business in the transfer market is Ollie Watkins is 29 years old. And I realize that in the scope of normal life, that's still a very young person. But in football, there are clubs that are resistant to paying a big transfer fee when, in all likelihood, at the end of it, you will not be recouping your cost if you sell 32-year-old, 33-year-old Ollie Watkins to another club. You'll get maybe some money back, but the resale value just isn't there. So who are the clubs they're going to go out there and make this guy their main man, spend the big money when, unfortunately, he's 29. That is a reality he cannot change. But without question, a player worth having, worth keeping, and can be an addition to any big team.
I can tell you one of those clubs that's definitely linked with Ollie Watkins. That's Manchester United once again. It feels like they're at the forefront of all of the minds when you're talking about these number 9s around Europe. So do you see him fitting in Ruben Amorim's system, though?
I do. I like him more as a fit than Šeško, and it's only the age difference that you would consider for me as a mitigating factor. More Premier League proven, more experienced, and has that ability, I think, to combine and be a runner and provide something different than what is currently there in terms of profile at Manchester United. I think he would work incredibly well with Cunha and Mbeumo and Bruno Fernandes as well. So I think this signing, actually, if they want to go sign a striker, and think that Højlund and Zirkzee and whoever else are not enough, I think this is the player that makes more sense. But also, we've talked about Manchester United signing players past their prime too many times. Are they worried about signing players 27, 28, 29 plus? So that would be the worry if I were to think about this signing for Man United. But to me, he makes all the sense in the world for what they need at this moment.
And the biggest grumble, of course, during this window is naturally going to be around this man, Alexander Isak. We already know that this is going to be one that probably goes down to the wire. Liverpool have put in a bid which has already been rejected for over $100 million for this man right here. And look, he's as cool as a cucumber. But do you see him still wearing the black and white when we come to the season open and the window is closed?
Actually, can I throw this back at you? Because you were telling me before the show that Newcastle fans are different. They're not like any other fan base. Once you betray them for the first time, they're not having it. Do you think the fans will welcome him back if he U-turns and decides, no, I'm not going to go get a move. Maybe it didn't work out with Liverpool. Maybe it didn't work out elsewhere, and I'm going to be your striker again. What does that look like?
I'm going to give the honest comparison that I gave in the production meeting. The Newcastle United fans are the equivalent to the New York Knicks fans. In their minds, they are the biggest team that has ever played in any sport. Their loyalty to their team is a completely different level. So you can see that in Alan Shearer, who had opportunities to go to Manchester United. You can see what it means to the club when someone represents them, especially when you're a leading striker, especially when you scored goals. So he can do a lot of this, but I promise you, the fans will not be opening up the doors like that straight away to him.
They're not caring about what's back here. They're caring about what's here.
Exactly.
What's here, the badge. And I think that's such an interesting place because he has done the thing which a lot of players are too afraid to do. Make it messy, make it uncomfortable, put the pressure on Newcastle to sell him or pay him an amount of money that he'll feel happy with. But I think now the direction of travel, you mentioned that rejected bid, it seems though Liverpool are telling a lot of people in the media, we're done with this. We put in one bid and we're not coming back in.
Chris, you've been in this game for a long time.
I know, but that's what they're telling everyone. That's what they're telling everyone.
You know how this game works. If I tell you that, oh, I don't want you anymore, what then happens? The pressure turns up, right? Yeah. Agents start making calls. So do you believe Liverpool won't come back in for him again?
No, but I think, do you think they'll take it to the very end of the window? They'll, August 29th, August 30th, August 31st, and they're going to Liverpool, or they're going to Newcastle. Are you sure? Are you sure you want this problem for the next 6 months or the next year? You probably don't. You probably don't. How's 110 million?
We've seen this so many times, though. The player power is completely different in 2025 than it's been in any other stage of any player's career. So he has the power, and I think he recognises he has the power. So are you asking my opinion? He probably will end up in a Liverpool shirt. But if he does end up in a Liverpool shirt, I just want to know, is that the final piece? Would that make Liverpool put them over the edge as turn man and Premier League champions and, of course, Champions League winners as well?
Look, they have everything that you could ever want. They have everything you could ever want in a football team. It's just sometimes we've seen it happen too much in this sport and in other sports, where it all looks great on paper. You go blank plus blank plus blank plus blank equals domination, and it doesn't happen. So I would want to see those pieces come together and actually work before I say it's all over. They're going to dominate everything, because it's just not that simple. But yeah, you would make them pretty heavy favorites to win everything, honestly.